This episode of Lobbing Scorchers is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based cellar. Not only are they a local company, but they've been supporting independent Seattle soccer media since 2011 and are run by Sounders fans. They offer the best boutique wines in the world to members of their mailing list with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Their model is simple. 1, they email compelling offers. 2, you request bottles that sound appealing. 3, your wine arrives at their Soto warehouse and is ready for pickup or shipping. Their Soto tasting room is also open to the public. If you're interested in joining their mailing list or learning more about them, visit fullpullwines.com. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 70 of Lobbing Scorchers. This is Ari Liljenwall. Got producer Noah here with me. And Noah, we've got the last regular season pod of the 2024 MLS regular season.
War is over.
How are you feeling?
War is over. Is it? No, it's not. War just started, Ari.
It's true. The regular season is over, but the playoffs are just beginning, which is very exciting. And we're going to talk about all that today on a draw pod, as the Seattle Sounders have closed their 2024 regular season with a 1-1 decision day draw against the Portland Timbers at Lumen Field. We're going to break that down in our game review at the start of the show. We're going to hit our final regular season agenda check. And then we have a guest today. Guest episode. Woo! And it's a good one. We've got Max Bretos, the man himself, voice of LAFC and Apple TV broadcaster.
Voice of the Sounders, too. I'm just going to say
he's called a lot of Sounders games.
Yeah.
He calls the whole league. He knows the whole league really well. So it's going to be good content with Max Bretos. We're going to talk playoff preview, probably talk about the Houston Dynamo a little bit. So it's going to be a jam-packed show. But before we get into all that, I did want to let you all know that Lobbing Scorchers is a part of the Sounder at Heart podcast network. If you want to get the best independent Seattle soccer coverage, consider supporting us by going to sounderatheart.com/LS. That's sounderatheart.com/LS. Scroll down to subscribe and support to get 30 days completely free. Every sign up through our link helps support and grow this show. And folks, on our last episode, we said we were going to stop reading the sub list if we hit 40 subs, and we did not. So we need 2 more subs still to hit the big 4-0. And until then, we're going to keep reading the sub list. Noah?
True that.
Thank the subs, please.
Thank you all for subscribing. I also added all the sub names to sounderatheart.com/LS. So now under the little player, it'll have all of your names scrolling by. So you can see that. So that's just an added listen, I'm just saying there's a lot to gain here. But let's get it going. Kenneth Wade, Joey Pasquinelli, David McCoy, Owen Mason, Daniel Pavato, Samuel Fout, Ian Mitchell, Christopher Smith, Norm Bonnier, Thomas Martin, Greg Hoker, Chris Maley, Andy Hill, Mike Lentini, Nate Bonnier, David Rodriguez, CJ and Miles Marinakis,
my nephews,
Mark Ottinger, Zach Heckman, David Pope, Brian Morton, Claire Berger, Robert Singh, Tyler Nakatsu, Steve Hudson, Choska, Patrick Sexton, John Hammaker, Emma Buck, Justin Walker, Jay Anders, Ryan Shane, Nathan Jones, Benjamin Dubashar, Isaac Johnson, Matthew Burns, Ryan Boone, and Brian Chow. Woo!
That's a long list. I'd
That's
love to hear
38
that,
names.
That's 38 names. Help us on the drive to 40, please. And also, if you have not done so yet, please subscribe to the Lobbing Scorchers YouTube.
We saw a big jump.
It was a pretty big jump, but we still have not summited the road to 600.
That's true.
We're 8 away. We're at 592. So please just go and just hit that sub button. It takes like 1 second, and it really helps us out. All right, enough of that. Let's get into the draw pod, Noah. Because there's a lot to talk about with this draw. This is a pretty frustrating dub pod, I would say, or draw pod.
It should have been a dub pod. It should have been a
dub pod. Is what I was trying to say. I think going into this game, there was still a big storyline hanging over Seattle regarding how much Portland has frankly gotten the better of this rivalry in recent years, even though Seattle tempered that earlier this year by winning at Providence Park. So that's not as much a storyline, but I think just generally speaking, the last few years, this rivalry has absolutely gone the way of Portland. And this game was frustrating because it really felt like for most of the night, for a lot of the night, that this was going to be kind of a statement performance that ended that. That's how I was kind of feeling for a lot of the game. And then it did not pan out as such. So we're going to talk about why. But first, let's do our lineup reaction because I think these have been relatively simple lately. They've been running pretty much the same thing game in, game out. The thing I will say about this lineup is this is the playoff lineup, I think, assuming full health. But the question that I think with this lineup that I put in the agenda checks, we're not going to talk about it right now, but I think the only question with this lineup is, do you like Georgie or De La Vega as the starter? And who do you like as the starter? Who do you like as the super sub in that duo? So we're going to talk about that in agenda check. But other than that, did you have any other thoughts on the lineup other than that this is probably what it's going to look like as the squad chases an MLS Cup?
You know, I wasn't super shocked at this lineup. I thought maybe throw a little wrench in there. We might see Raul not start, but just, I don't know, maybe Brian was going to go crazy mode. He's got a bajillion goals against them. And I thought, maybe it was an opportunity to get him a little primed and ready for the playoffs, which just having him completely ineffective I just don't think is an option. Maybe I'm insane for that take.
No, it's definitely, I mean, I wouldn't say that. Like, I think a lot of their playoff prospects hinge on Rui Diaz getting on track a little bit, but it would be a huge boost. And
it's him or Danny
honestly,
Musovski.
like, I think him getting hot would make me feel a lot more bullish on this team's prospects of actually making a run. I did have one other take on for lineup reaction on the Portland Timbers lineup, which is that, I was looking at the starting 11s before the game. I look at Seattle's, go and look at Portland's just to see how they're lining it up. They had a center back out there named Finn Sermon.
Yeah.
Who is Finn Sermon?
Who is this guy, bro? Where did they find him?
Who is Finn Sermon? Like, it is really rare and borderline shocking for me when I look at a MLS starting lineup and I see a name that I literally have never seen before in my life. And, it does happen sometimes. I don't see every single signing. I don't watch every single game of every single team. I'm still pretty surprised that there was a starting CB out there who I had never heard of in my life. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, I mean, I look him up. He's a 21-year-old New Zealander who had never played an MLS game. And he was getting his first start. And, it was by necessity. They had suspensions and injuries that necessitated it. But still, I mean, for me, that raises my eyebrows right away because I'm like, okay, well, now you know who to target. Like, you need to just spam this kid with as many long balls, just as much. It's sort of almost like similar to if you have Sean Zawatsky in goal, like not in the same way that he's playing a position he doesn't know, but he's inexperienced in a tough spot.
Right.
You try and exploit that. But like, to be fair, Finn Sermon, I thought, played pretty well. I didn't think Portland's defense played well at all. I thought they were conceding chances and not controlling the tempo of the game for most of the night. But he did stuff De La Vega in transition with a really nice slide tackle, and they only gave up one goal. So, Finn
it wasn't his fault.
Yeah, Finn Sermon, I guess. Shout out Finn Sermon. Just any MLS player who I've never heard of that's always.
Could he be their Paul Rothrock?
The Paul Rothrock of the Portland Timbers defense? Possibly. I don't know. I mean, either way, that was a big subplot going into the game, and he turned out to actually have played pretty well. Seattle scored first in this game, which is another reason it's frustrating. They didn't wind up taking all 3 points. It was Ymar in the 37th minute, another set-piece goal.
Sick-ass header.
A sick-ass header, another perfect delivery from Rusnak. He gets his 16th assist of the season on that. So, again, he continues to have a very good, very productive season. And really, it was another set-piece goal, not from the run of play, but... I mean, I don't know, man. I thought this game was very one-sided. Really, up until the red card. I think the statistics agree. I think the eye test very much agreed. I thought Seattle was beating the Timbers like a drum out there.
Yeah.
Really, even into the second half. And it was a little bit reminiscent of the Sounders team that was struggling at the beginning of the year, or really last year is what it reminded me of. The XG merchants, when they would actually play really well and generate the chance creation was really good. The play in transition looked pretty good, and it seemed like the offense was functioning, but they just couldn't finish. That's sort of what last night felt like. But I would say that they were playing even better last night than they had at or on Saturday, I guess.
Yeah.
They're playing even better than they were at those times when they were XG merchanting a couple years ago.
No, I agree. I think that it was just the pure amount of shots that they were taking, and like the chance creation was. It was like shocking that they weren't finishing anything. It was like it just felt unlucky, which is what I feel like that last season where they were in their XG merchant era felt like. It was just this like, oh my God, like, can we get any more unlucky? Like, this is a perfect service, or this is the perfect, you need to score those kind of moment. And I don't know, that's how I felt. And especially around a couple of those De La Vega plays, which I'm sure we will get into our De La Vega checkup.
Yeah, so this game got pretty crazy later on in the second half. The Timbers tied it in the 68th minute. Anthony, who was only starting because Santiago Moreno was out, so he's like one of their backup wingers. This goal was conceded on what I would say was a poorly defended counterattack. I do think Nuhu had his share of the culpability in that, although as most things when it comes to Nuhu, I feel like the extent to which it was 100% his fault perhaps was exaggerated, but like he was the one who was tracking back trying to stop Anthony, and he did not do it. But that felt like pretty much the only chance, clear-cut, great chance that the Timbers had throughout the game, and they finished it. I mean, fair play to them on the goal. I thought Seattle's defense was up for it for the most part, other than that. And to me, again, like a game like this, we said this so many times when this team was struggling to function on offense earlier this season and last season, but like, I don't know, you're going to concede goals sometimes, especially in a rivalry game. It's not always realistic that you're going to keep a clean sheet. You got to be able to score multiple goals, and the fact that they couldn't do that in this game is what cost them, even more so than the red card, which we're about to talk about. But they didn't even concede after the red card. So I mean, it's as simple as if you score multiple goals, you win this game, and that's what if we're slicing up the blame pie, I do have to blame the offense, even though I thought this was a pretty good offensive performance. And for that reason, I came out of this game definitely like annoyed at the result and annoyed that this storyline of the Timbers running the rivalry continues to persist. But as far as what we saw performance-wise from the team, like right before the playoffs, what you want to see is that you're in form, functioning at a high level, and that basically you're good to go to try and make a run. I feel like I saw what I needed to see in that regard. Like, I would have been very concerned if, this was a game where Portland played Seattle off the field, had a much better performance than them, beat Seattle by multiple goals, something like that. Then you're starting to be like, all right, that was a bad result and a terrible performance, and the playoffs feel a lot dicier. I really don't feel like that personally. Like, I feel like this team looks as ready as they can for the playoffs, and that the good form that they've demonstrated over the last couple months is they're still in that as the playoffs start here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't disagree that this wasn't this is not going to deter me from being semi-confident on the playoffs. I don't know if I'm fully bought into the narrative that some people have that, the Sounders have a really good chance still. But what this game just pissed me off.
It was a frustrating one to watch.
Off. Like, yeah. I'm not a yeller. I'm not a yeller at the TV kind of person. Like, I get excited, but I'll be like, I'll like mutter to myself. You know what I'm saying? Me and my girlfriend, we're literally both standing up, yelling at the TV as we'll get into, specifically this Obed Vargas red card and just other little things. Jordan Morris not finishing, some just perfect chances. Pedro de la Vega looking incredibly dangerous, but just taking one too many touches, not laying the ball off, not getting a shot off. It was just one of those games where I felt like I was being tortured by everyone and everything.
Yeah, so let's talk about this red card, because that was really the biggest play of the game, and that's the one that everyone was talking about after the game. And really, unfortunately, we're going to have to talk about the ref in general. You know, I know we had someone a while back who was getting on us for talking about the refs too much. I mean, I think it was definitely an undeniable storyline in this game. And then also, just to explain how I think of like discussions about a call like this. Like, for me, a lot of the time, it's not even about, the ref like cost the team the game or like cost the team points or like outrage over stuff like that. It's more just like, was it called correctly and like the theory behind it and like the rules of the game. I think that's interesting to talk about and like how refs handle certain situations. So that's where I'm kind of coming from with it. But I do think in this scenario, this red card did blow up the game, and there was some unique stuff, I'll call it, about the officiating in this game. Seattle had already gotten steamed a couple minutes before this happened. I mean, I think both teams were steamed at how the game was being managed and like the fouls that were getting called or not called all night.
I mean, I think Portland was a beneficiary, clearly.
But they were getting mad too, is my point. I don't think anyone was happy about how the game was being officiated. But there was two sequences in particular that really set Seattle off, and you usually don't see Brian Schmetzer get this animated on the sidelines like at a ref. He was literally like laughing at this, but there was two separate sequences where it looked to me like there was foul in the buildup, and Seattle had clear as day advantage. The second time when it would have been like they would have been off to the races it would have been on, and it was like he pulled it back both times. When the first time you don't pull that back. The second time, if that sequence happens 100 times, you play advantage all 100.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand like why you wouldn't play it in that scenario. So that was weird enough. But this red card for Obed was very frustrating because it was not a foul for dangerous play or violent conduct. It was a second yellow for dissent.
Getting mad.
Yeah. And I don't think he even verbally yelled anything at the ref.
No, he was yelling at the he was like looking down.
He did the punch the air thing and yelled, and the ref gave him a second yellow card after having just given him a yellow card a few minutes prior.
I had a conspiracy theory on this. I tweeted, I said, like after he gave this card, I said, I have a theory that the center ref forgot that he had already given Obed a yellow and was too quick with it, but had to commit to the bit so he didn't look like a dumbass.
Yeah, no, so I'm pretty sure that's what happened. I'm pretty sure he didn't.
But that's what Brian Schmetzer said.
He forgot that Obed got a yellow previously and thought he was just giving him a yellow, but then it turned out to be his second yellow, so he gets sent off. I have a problem with that because whether a player is on, refs do this all the time, and whether a player is on a yellow or not already shouldn't factor into whether you give them a yellow for one offense or another. Like if it's a yellow card offense, it's a yellow card offense, even if they're on a yellow, and the call just should not be affected by that, in my opinion. First of all, second of all, I also have a problem with a yellow for dissent getting someone sent off in a rivalry game where it's obviously going to be heated and emotional out there. I don't think he said anything like at the ref. It did not look like to me. It looked like he was mad at the call, but he reacted demonstratively. But
also, who gives a shit?
I don't think. Yeah, exactly. Like I don't even think the yellow should have been given there. I think you let that go.
And I think the perfect illustration of why that shouldn't be a yellow is towards the end of the game, Jonathan Rodriguez did the same thing 3 times, and the ref stared him in the face while Jonathan Rodriguez physically advanced towards the referee while chirping, and the ref would just like let it go. Yes, that is exactly what you should do. Jonathan Rodriguez shouldn't be sent off, and Obed shouldn't have been sent off. And even before that, I'm not a referee, all right? So like I have respect for these guys, but his positioning on the field was bizarre. He kept getting in the way of plays. I don't know if you saw this, like I was seeing this. He kept like being in the way. The ball hit him at one point and he didn't stop play. He just let it keep going. And it was just, he was so far out of his depth. It was genuinely bizarre. And like, I don't like to say that a game was lost because of the referee. And I don't think this game was lost because of a referee. I think the Sounders still had an opportunity to win this and close this out, even a man down.
I thought they were still kind of cooking with 10 men.
That's what I'm saying. So I don't think this was the ref's fault, but it's like it changes the game state. It changes the mentality of players. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing as a league to have that go on.
Yeah, I mean, it was just unfortunate because it ruined what had been a fun and good game.
Yeah.
And, like you said, like, I don't think really Seattle can blame much on it because Portland got their goal before the red card.
Exactly.
So, like, I don't really think it's about that. It's more just about, taking the wind out of the sails in a game like that for an offense that I think is ultimately pretty trivial. And then also, Obed, the suspension rolls over into the playoffs.
Yeah.
He can't play in game 1 against Houston. And it's just annoying that he's getting suspended for, if someone's going to get a red card, I want money's worth.
Right. I was thinking Paul Rothrock might get, like, if I was going to put money on anyone getting one, I saw Paul Rothrock just absolutely going after Anthony at some points. Like, they were chirping at each other. Like when he like pushed him because Anthony like kind of hooked his arm around him, I was like, oh shit, Paul Rothrock sent off, but like at least they're gonna fist fight about it. It's like, no, Obed punching the turf, so he doesn't get to play.
The air. Yeah. So anyway, he's out for game 1 against Houston. So it's good that JP's been back to health. That's going to be the double pivot for that game. But unfortunate because also Obed had been playing his best ball of the year, which I think is saying a lot.
Yeah.
Going into the playoffs here. So wish we could have watched him play in the next game, but alas, it's not to be. Let's hit the anti-Rusnak Brigade update real quick, see how they're doing, because they actually they were popping off a little bit last night because it was a big game and Seattle only scored 1 goal. And the Brigade was kind of saying like it's another example of him like disappearing in big games. I don't know how much I agree with that when you consider that the goal that Seattle did score, he had like a filthy assist on it, and
he was playing in dimes the whole first half too.
The offense looked really good all game. I thought he played excellent. Maybe other people.
Well, maybe
clearly the Brigade sees that differently.
Well, because Portland's bummy though.
I thought Seattle's offense was really good in this game. Oh yeah, but Portland are bums. So.
Yeah.
But wait, it's a big game. So it's a rivalry game, so he doesn't show up.
Matter.
But they're bums.
But they're bums, so it cancels out.
Anyway, the point is. They're still bringing it even in the midst of a season where he's pushing 30 goal contributions across all comps.
Yep.
So more power to him. It gives us content.
Yeah.
Keep tweeting, you guys.
We love the Brigade, but we hate the agenda.
We have a good relationship with the Brigade.
True.
Especially you on the group chat.
Shout out.
All right, let's hit the agenda check. I have 3 written down. Tell me what you think of these. One of them's a new one. So let's do this Georgie De La Vega discussion here. I have it written down as the Georgie should start agenda. And really, like, I think what that agenda comes down to is the notion that I'm just going to make the case. I'm putting
the mic down. I'm going to listen.
I'm just going to make the case. Like Georgie in the minutes he's gotten this season, it's not like a huge sample, but he's looked, I think, objectively more dangerous than De La Vega. And he's like impacted games more in the time that he's gotten on the field, like his impact as in his substitute appearances and then also in the Vancouver game where he scored a goal. I think that I'm not saying I believe this argument. I'm just presenting it. I think you could make the argument that the best iteration of this offense has Georgie starting and De La Vega as a super sub, which I think as much as it's you don't want like your young DP that you're trying to build the club around in a lot of ways for the next few years. You don't want him as a super sub, but as it stands with where the team is at personnel wise right now and where he's at physically, I think that's kind of nice. Yeah. And I like Georgie as a super sub too, but I think there's a compelling case to be made that Georgie should be in the starting 11 and De La Vega should be coming off the bench. What do you think?
I co-sign your agenda here. I was thinking about this during the game too, because first half De La Vega, he was a little bit hit or miss. He was, he's a little bit absent for parts of the game, but he came out of that second half swinging, and I thought that was the best half of soccer we've seen him play, hands down. Coming out of the locker room, post-game Brian Schmetzer pep talk, got in his head, got him ready to go. If he knows he's coming in super sub, running as hard as possible, going as hard as possible for that 45 minutes, I think that's his perfect game state right now. You start Georgie, if he's cooking, you could hold or pull or do whatever you need with De La Vega. It gives you that flexibility. And Georgie's just going to add that pace and that service that has been kind of missing with De La Vega. Like, I feel like he's a little bit of a floater. He kind of, at one point, him and Paul Rothrock switched sides. And I just, I don't know. I'm agreeing with this Georgie should start agenda. I think it's more than strengthened. I think Brian Schmetzer has, he takes our advice very seriously. He should listen to us on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's at the very least an interesting debate, which is kind of crazy to think about because, there's just no way before the season that if you told me we'd ever be debating Georgie versus Pedro De La Vega, who? And Georgie had like a credible case for it. It's definitely like there's a discussion to be had there.
Yeah, I think we should start Leo Chu actually.
That's okay. That's a good agenda.
I'm just kidding.
Next agenda: Christian Roldan should be a D mid for the rest of his career agenda. Ooh. This is a new one. I mean, he's looked really good since he's moved back into the double pivot, and it's kind of been a reminder to me of like just how good he was at that position to start his career. And as much as I had been a convert of the playing him as the right mid, I think long term, especially with where he's at in his career, pushing towards 30, I would rather see those spots on the roster go to either more proven players or like new signings or, Paul Rothrock. Like, drop Christian back to where he was so effective earlier in his career and has been playing really well in this double pivot, and just have that kind of be where he that's like his baseline,
he had
going
a
forward.
Masterclass this game. Like, I was
really the last few weeks, man.
Like, I mean, not to take away from the last few weeks, but I thought this game specifically, like, it was so visibly clear, even the dumbest soccer fan could see it. Like, he was dominating on all fronts. He was getting the ball around. I mean, he's such a talented player. Like, I think he can be really good anywhere, but I think in the last few weeks specifically, we've seen him become this just monster that I didn't really even know he could be.
Yeah.
And I mean, we pushed the agenda that he should be a right back, so we reserve the right to change this agenda too.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, so I think like we were pushing the right back thing because I just didn't really see like where he long term fit in the midfield there.
Yeah.
But now that I've seen how it's worked with him in the double pivot the last few weeks, I'm starting to get sold that that's the move for the future. Next agenda is Paul Rothrock related, but it's not really about his stock. It's more about where he fits in going forward. So this is kind of an extreme agenda, but everyone knows that Seattle is going to be in the market for at least one DP over the offseason. And so my agenda is that, Paul Rothrock is the DP winger, meaning that you don't need to sign one because you've already got a homegrown player for who you're going to have to give a raise at some point, but you're going to get cheap relative to it, like a TAM player or a DP. You have him.
He wants to stay here.
As we were talking about with Max, he's producing like a player like that right now. And I think the question becomes, do you think that it's sustainable going forward? And will he hit a plateau or trail off at some point? He's just been this steady upward trajectory the whole time, and he hasn't stopped yet. So I think before I fully commit to that agenda, I want to know more about the sustainability of it, which I think you can find out next year. But if it like turns into a thing where he is even close to like a 10-10 player, which is a pace that he's been on this year, if you look at his all comps production, I say allocate your resources elsewhere and let Paul Rothrock continue starting and being a big part of this attack.
No, I agree. I thought last night specifically also kind of illustrated the Sounders have identified that they really do want to sign a 9. And listen, Jordan Morris, I pushed your agenda. I love you. You really can't miss that many balls. And like, I think we could upgrade at the 9. So if you can take all of your money and instead of signing a winger, you sign a really talented 9, Denny Bawanga-esque, whoever-esque, and you're able to like move pieces around. Jordan Morris can be your backup 9. You've missed on every backup 9 for the last God knows, Abear, Musovski. Now Jordan Morris can play on the wing. He can slot in. He could be an attacking. Like, there's so much dynamism there, and Paul Rothrock shores that up. But then you also have Georgie. You also have De La Vega. I just think that's a loaded front if you can sign a 9 now. And so I know we've gone back and forth on what to do here, but yeah, I like this agenda. Is keep Paul Rothrock happy, man, because he's that depth piece.
He's the franchise.
Yeah, he is the franchise at this point. Yeah.
All right. Looks like you wrote down a couple other agendas. So why don't you unveil these, and I'll tell you what I think of them.
Here is my 2 agendas that I unleashed here. I thought RBW played pretty well in this game. I thought he had a nice little run towards the end here, and so my agenda is start RBW over JP agenda. JP's been a little, Christian Roldan, he can still cover that ground. He's no Obed, but I think you could get some nice attacking movement here with a little RBW.
So you're saying put RBW in the midfield?
Yeah. Cook.
This is a take. I like the principle of the agenda. My concern with that would be a player that young and already pretty inexperienced playing a position that I don't think he's ever played that position in an MLS game. For a playoff game, I'm
going Galaxy brained here, Ari.
I would be nervous about that. But I do think that you're potentially cooking with the notion of him like playing in that area of the field. I think we're still at a point where they're figuring out what his best position is. Like, I think it's been pretty well established that they see him as a fullback, and that's where he's been playing. But he's got a pretty unique, well-rounded skill set. So I think the premise of the agenda potentially has some legs, even if I personally would not start him in a playoff game at a position he hasn't played in MLS.
I mean, did he play more advanced in this Portland game? It felt to me like he was playing more of an advanced role because he subbed out for De La Vega out for him.
You could be right about that. I wasn't
really
I'm mainly going off what I've seen like this year as opposed to the last game because I don't really remember. But I mean, this year they have played him predominantly at fullback, and then
correct.
There's been a couple times I believe where he's played higher up on the wing. I don't know if I've ever seen him play center mid, but
it could cook. Because he's got the defensive mindedness to make those attacking movements. He's just got to be more centered. It's not that hard, Ari.
Yeah,
it's not that hard, Ari. Just get a little more centered.
Maybe we'll see that somewhere down the line if they don't sell him. All right, you had one more agenda.
Last agenda here is, can the Sounders win the cup agenda? I want to track this as we go through. We're pre-playoffs now. How are we feeling? Is it from this last game? Is it strengthened, diminished? Maybe we can do like a tier list. Like, is it hot? Is it cold? Or is it sat out on the stove for a little bit?
I think for me it's pretty cold, just because the way I sized up this pool of playoff teams is there are tiers to it, and I think there's a very clear tier of the elite teams that I expect one of them to win, and that would be Inter Miami, the Columbus Crew, and LAFC. Even though, I know I was saying that if you look at LAFC's season, it's not too dissimilar to a Real Salt Lake or a Seattle, but I do think that they have shown a gear that I acknowledge deserves to be put in the discussion with the other elite teams in the league right now. And I could see a scenario where they make a run and win an MLS Cup. Anything's possible. And Seattle could do that too. Like, if 2016 taught me anything, it's that it is possible in a year where you think it might not be. Playoffs are a lot about who gets hot at the right time and not necessarily about who's the best team or who has the best team, who's got the best roster, who's got the best player. That does not necessarily equate to an MLS Cup victory. So that, like, anything could happen. But I think ultimately the trouble I have getting to a scenario where the Sounders actually win the cup is just, I think I'm very, very certain that whoever comes out of the West is going to have to go to Miami and I don't think there's anyone in the West who wins that game. Not LAFC. Definitely not the Galaxy. Like, can you imagine the Galaxy defense trying to slow down Messi and the Barca boys?
Be funny. Be fun to watch.
So I just think that is that's a mountain that I don't expect any team in the West to be able to climb. Like, I don't mean to make it sound like a predetermined outcome, but I'm just telling you guys, like, if you haven't watched a lot of Inter Miami this year, like, their top gear is just different than anyone else in the league. And I think not just Seattle, every team, any team who comes out of the West is probably going to have to deal with that. And going there and winning that game, it's hard to see, man.
Yeah, I'm not feeling it right now. I don't think that it's dead in the water. I think the most likely outcome is the most likely, like, high outcome in my, like, they could make they could make the final. They could make MLS Cup. I think that's a possibility.
Yeah.
Do I think they will win it? I have zero faith if we're playing Inter Miami. If we're playing anyone else, I think there's a chance. But generally speaking, I'm lukewarm on this right now. I'm not cold, but I'm lukewarm on this, especially after this Portland game where you face a little bit of adversity, but you're still outperforming this team. Weren't able to get it done. For me, that's an indicator that, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to get it done on the biggest stage.
If it's Columbus that Seattle has to play, maybe they'll field a backup goalkeeper this time.
I mean, we'll see.
All right, let's dive into questions. We've got a few lined up here. Thank you, as always, to everyone who got the discourse flowing in my mentions. There was a lot going on after that game, as you can imagine. But
always,
we've picked a few of them right here. Noah, what do we got?
Thank you all for your questions. This first one comes from Nat Lang. Only caught the end, but Georgie looked very dangerous. How does this performance change the outlook of the Sounders offseason?
That's a good question. I think it's kind of related to what we were just talking about with Paul Rothrock. But I mean, I think you need more of a sample, I think, on both players to really make a credible evaluation. They just haven't played enough to really know where they stand or what their value truly is. However, the Paul Rothrock stock is looking great. And honestly, still, even as we record episode 70, after starting this literally on episode 1, it is still increasing basically by the week with how he's been producing.
It's been over a year. It's been 2 seasons.
And it's been, especially like this part of the season where Seattle's been really hot, like the example's gotten bigger and he's kept doing it. So I think at the very least, you can feel like pretty good about his stock going forward. And then the Georgie stock, remember I was lukewarmer on it.
We
were
both hesitant, I think.
Yeah, like I was comparing him to Leo Chu a lot, just in terms of like he hadn't shown a lot of end products yet, which for young players to be expected, but you do need to see that before you tab any sort of like crazy value on them. But I think I like seeing him get the goal in the Vancouver game and just really how effective his skill set has been at like, beating defenders and making runs and just being dangerous on the ball. I think that I think there's, like we were saying, I think there's a good chance that like this position group in particular, with your roster build, you might be able to sort of, I don't even think it's Moneyball in it. It's just player development. Yeah. And then when you succeed at player development like that and you hit on those and they contribute, that's when you can allocate your money to other parts of the roster and really build like a strong contending team. So, I mean, that's why these players that come like internally, like whether it's homegrown or like Georgie who signed with Defiance and like worked his way up, it's so important. And I think we were talking about this on the last show, but I think it's a big reason why Seattle was able to win 16 games and rack 57 points this year without 2 DPs. You know? So
credit to Brian.
Yeah, and Schmetz made a Coach of the Year case. So it's a good point from Nat.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if we're gonna go just broad, like what position groups I would prefer to see addressed, 1A, 1B. a 9, a striker, but someone so lethal, someone like that Rui Diaz profile when he was in his prime, someone that can finish off those balls that Jordan Morris may not be able to, but that can also complement Jordan Morris on the wing, and, you know, where maybe they can do some kind of interplay type moment. You know what I'm saying? And then secondly, something that you brought up and that I just can't stop thinking about is like a really, really good attacking fullback, like a wing back, Jovan Jones core, like really talented player. And I think Alex Roldan has really cemented himself this season, but I still think you could upgrade on that position. And then number 2, a 6, a bruiser, something crazy.
That's
especially
like,
if you sell Obed.
That is my number 1.
Yeah.
Like what I would want to see.
And what would that be? What would the reason be for that? Like over like a 9?
I just think, well, okay. I mean, yeah, I guess the next question is actually.
Yeah, we'll hit that.
Read the next question.
Sorry,
and then, yeah.
I'm jumping ahead here.
Yeah.
Max asks, should the Sounders sign a 9 this offseason? As much as I love Jordan, it feels he struggles to deliver when we need him.
Yeah, so I think you just laid out a good case for why a number 9 should be on their radar, and I think it is on their radar. And
I'd be shocked if they don't go after that.
I think just in principle, you know, you have your DP9 this year who didn't play a lot and didn't produce that much, and like you need that spot in the roster to be producing for you. But the reason I want to see like a nasty bruiser number 6, like you were talking about, is because I feel like something this roster could really use is just like more attitude and bite and swagger and like meanness and competitive, like Ozzy Alonso.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think this team has lacked that in the last few years. It's a lot of nice guys, which is great. Like, there's nothing wrong with being a nice guy, but I think
Paul Rothrock can't be the meanest guy on your team.
Yeah. Most great teams have a couple of bad dudes like on the field. You know what I mean? And I really think a player of that profile that is not afraid to mix it up, that does the dirty work, that goes into tackles, gets physical. Basically, I'm saying that they should sign Ozzy Alonso. Because I miss watching him play, but I think that infusion of like attitude and nastiness is something that would really benefit this team.
Yeah, and I could see that as well. I think that's the great part about it is like you can do that and also get a 9. You know, I think there's a possibility for that, and I think that it's an even easier possibility if you really are looking to sell on Obed, to move him on, which like it will be a sad day in the Lobbing Scorchers household when we have to see him go, but like for his career trajectory, I'd be super happy. I just think those are the 2 positions, a 9 and a 6 like that, where there's a little bit of a weak spot and there's a little bit of an opportunity to sell someone on, move a player around, get that fresh bite that the team needs. You know, I think one of your criticisms this season that I really liked was sometimes things just get too comfortable in training, in the locker room and everything. And like benching Raul for Paul Rothrock, that was part of their success, was everyone was like, oh shit, next man up mentality. Like it could be me. It could be me. And then Georgie comes in and it was literally the same thing. It was like, it could be me. If Paul gets this chance, I can have this chance. I'm going to make the most of this. So regardless of who they sign, they got to sign someone this offseason. Do you agree with that?
Well, I mean, I do agree with it, and I think it's like a foregone conclusion.
Correct. Yeah. Well, Michael asks here, what's left to consider this season? What is left to consider this season? This season, dude, I'm tongue twister today. What's left to? Anyway, is this season a success? What would make this season a success? Would it be beating LAFC in the playoffs or just MLS Cup?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Michael. And I thought this would be a good opportunity to sort of like take stock of what we think of the team's performance this season and what we would want to see in the playoffs for it to be considered a success. So, I mean, I'll just give my take on the season as a whole, which is that my evaluation of it and opinion of it has changed quite a lot in the last like month or two, I would say, with how much better the team has played than they were earlier in the season. And I mean, the way I look at it is like going into every season, I want the team that I root for to push 60 points ideally and like be as close to 2 points per game as possible and contend, like compete for trophies, compete for MLS Cup. And I try not to like base whether it's a success or not, or if I take enjoyment or fulfillment from a season on whether they win MLS Cup or not. Like you're just
statistically speaking,
you're not gonna do that every year. So I think fans who like use that as the be all end all barometer every year get themselves in like mental health struggles. But like, so my criteria, the way I try to think of it is like, I just want relevance, I want contention, and I want entertainment. And I think that Seattle did a good job to kind of check those boxes this year in a season where we were very frustrated earlier this season. I think rightfully so, because the entertainment aspect of what I was talking about was not really there, and the team wasn't scoring, and it felt kind of like boring and stale for a pretty lengthy stretch of last season and earlier this season, I would say. But I mean, I judge it on the whole body of work, and when you look at the table at the end of the year, they got a top 4 spot. They won 16 games. The goal differential was plus 16, which is solid. So would I like to see them up with Columbus and Miami and all them in terms of points per game and like being a truly dominant elite team in the league? Yes, that is the goal. That's where they're trying to get to over this offseason. But when I look at this season as a whole, I'm decently happy with how it went, and I think the rest of my opinion on it will be formulated by how the playoffs go. So getting to whether I think or what I would consider a success this season, for me, it's like getting if you have the regular season that they just had and then you immediately get bounced out of the playoffs, that is not a success at all. Like just making the playoffs and crashing out. So that would be, we would skewer them for that. But for me, I think a successful season would be going deep into the playoffs, conference championship, and then at that point, like, you know, everything else for me personally is like icing on the cake. Mm-hmm. But if they make it to the conference championship and then they lose, I'll be like, that sucks. And, you know, at that point, we'll start talking about what they need to do to get over that hurdle. But I think I would be pretty happy with the season overall and consider it like a good solid year.
Yeah, I think for many fans, this is what I'm dubbing this season, because I don't really think there are like super objectively good and bad seasons. I think it's just such a range of like where I like to look at it. Did I have fun? You know, beginning of the season, I was not having fun. I was actively not having fun. The only thing that was fun was getting here on the mic with you, Ari. Yeah. And like being able to find some kind of solace and like, well, that just happened. But this is the season of almosts. And I think that is why it has felt so much worse. Almost getting an automatic qualification for CONCACAF Champions League, almost beating the Portland Timbers at home, almost getting to an Open Cup final, almost, you know, all of these things, like almost advancing, maybe almost beating LAFC, all of this stuff. It's like, it makes a fine season, a good season even, feel like a total failure because you're almost there and you can taste it. But if you are the New York Red Bulls, or you are Minnesota United, or the Colorado Rapids even, you're like, I want to be Seattle right now, you know? And I think we talk about Seattle fans being spoiled, but I don't even think it's that. I just think it's when you're that close to getting there, it hurts so much more when you're not able to close it out. And I just think that that's where this team is. They're good. They're not great. And it's the season of almost.
Yeah, I have a couple more things to say on this, which is that, first of all, part of my perspective on like why I look at it the way I do is colored by the fact that I think I give more equity to the winning that the team has done in this past era than most people do. You know, if you have a year that maybe doesn't go as well, but you've bagged a couple MLS Cups and CCL in the last 5 years before that, I will give more equity for that because you've been about it. You've been making runs. You've been winning big games. You've been making playoff runs, going to 4 MLS Cups, winning a couple, first team to win CCL. Like I think you earn that equity through winning, and that's why I'm not really with a lot of the self-loathing that comes from the fan base a lot, because like you said, like pretty much every fan base in the league, save for a precious few, would easily trade their trophy haul for Seattle's without a second thought. So I don't know. I try to acknowledge that, be grateful for that, and also take that into account when I'm evaluating how I feel about it, because I just think there's different things at stake when you're a team that's like never been there and never won it compared to a team that is has been a dynasty. So there's that, first of all. But I did want to acknowledge, like, hearing you go through how you thought of the season as the almost season. There's definitely negatives that it's totally fair to point out. And I think the how the LAFC games went this year, not acceptable. Like, you don't have to beat them every game. Mm-mm. You don't really even have to beat them at all, in my opinion. But you have to, like,
they can't look like the boogeyman.
You have to compete.
Yeah.
You have to, like, have dignity out there. You have to give them a run for their money. Give them a good game. And if you lose, I will again give some equity to the fact that they're a great team. But, like, to get absolutely demolished and eliminated from multiple tournaments and be non-competitive against them, that deserves to be criticized.
We got champagne
without
popped
a doubt.
us.
I think
unforgivable.
Yeah, I think similarly the form against Portland, like with how decision day went, like you have to get that storyline of them dominating the rivalry dead, and they did not do that this year. They did win. We were saying they killed it after they won at Portland earlier this season, but then they lost to Portland at home, and then tied them in really dumb fashion on decision day. So there's those two things, and I think just how they played in tournaments would be another, like Leagues Cup. They did not acquit themselves very well.
No.
Open Cup, they made it pretty far and were playing well,
but played bots most of the time.
Played bots and then lost to LAFC.
Yeah.
So those would be the negatives that I have, but I do have relatively like positive feelings about the season on the whole. Even though like there are things like those things that I mentioned, like that's just gotta get fixed next year.
And I think for those people who are feeling some type of way about this season, you have to check yourself a little bit, because sure, you can feel however you want to feel. I mean, it doesn't keep me up at night, but also there are fun storylines to follow, and soccer is fun. Soccer is meant to be this fun activity that we all enjoy. If you're not having fun, man, do not just like log off. You know what I'm saying? I have had the most fun this season out of any season following one player, following a coaching decision that should have in 99 out of 100 universes doesn't happen. There are so many fun things to watch about this team and enjoy about this team. That's not like saying you shouldn't criticize them. It's just saying, like, if you are crashing out every single week because we didn't win every trophy, you're being a little dumb. And like, you probably just are not fun to be around. So that's my final take on that.
All right, we got one more question. What do we got here?
Wes says, was this the correct application of the whippersnapper rule, where dissent towards the ref is perfectly acceptable unless you're under 20 years old, in which case, have some respect, you scamp?
Yeah, so he's talking about the Obed red card, and I think that's actually a good point of what might have happened there as well, which is, he got targeted for being like the young kid who disrespected authority, disrespected authority, and I think we can all relate to Obed with that in some degree, being suppressed by the man. But yeah, good point.
Don't let the man hold you down, Obed. Fight back. Thank you for your questions. We appreciate you. And now, Ari, I think we have something quite special.
That's right. We're going to welcome on our latest guest on Lobbing Scorchers. It's an exciting one today. Like I said, we've got Max Bretos, the voice of LAFC, joining us for our...
Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes No Sadietes, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. We've been independent since August of 2023, but need your support to make sure it continues. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible by your continued support. Memberships start as low as $25 a year, which not only helps make podcasts like this one happen, but also gets you access to everything we produce. If you're able to support us at higher levels, starting at $75 a year, you gain access to a host of other perks, most notably entry into our members-only Discord, where the smartest, funniest, and most engaged commenters share their thoughts and ideas. To find out more, just visit sounderatheart.com and click the subscribe button in the top right corner. Thanks for listening.
Our interview. We're very excited to welcome in our next guest to talk about some end of season award stuff, to talk about some MLS Cup playoff previews, and maybe some other topics. We have got the one and only Max Bretos, voice of LAFC and Apple TV announcer, joining the show right now. Max, thanks so much for taking the time to join us tonight. How are you doing?
Doing great. It's tremendous to be with you, Ari and Noah. Been looking forward to this. I know Noah's mentioned it to me a couple times, and Ari as well. So the fact that it's happening now is pretty exciting.
I know, it's surreal. Yeah, it all started out actually like many things on this show with Paul Rothrock.
Correct.
Yeah, we took notice of the use of Rock and Roll on a Seattle broadcast that you were doing, and that's a term that we had used before. People were saying that you Max lifted it from us, but that's not true. Like, it's a very easy.
We're very unoriginal here.
So I wanted to clarify that first and foremost for the people.
And I didn't lift you, but I just want to make it abundantly clear. I am not above and beyond lifting, plagiarizing from folks in the soccer spectrum in a light way. Plagiarism is too strong a word, but if I see something, maybe I'll pop it in there from time to time if I like it.
Rock and Roll is public domain. Any publicity that he can get, and honestly, we really appreciate him getting some national attention because we've been talking about him here in Seattle all season. We'll get to Paul Rothrock, but to start off here, I wanted to ask you about the discourse of the moment. It's end of season awards season.
We did our ballot.
We did an episode where we went through our ballot. I cast my votes earlier today, actually. But I wanted to ask you who you have for MVP this year. There's been a lot of debate about this, and I will tell you that I've gone through a lot of consternation over it and like who I should vote for. And I came to the conclusion that it has to be Lionel Messi. And when we were talking through it, I kind of got to a point where I think it's honestly a little crazy that we're even debating it, considering the types of numbers he's put up this year and how efficiently he's done it. I actually think the amount of minutes he's played, which is the knock that people are using against him, actually strengthens his case when you consider that his numbers are as good or better than all the other candidates in about half the minutes. How did you size up this year's MVP race? And you can tell us who you voted for if you want, but you don't have to.
Sure. No, I voted for Cucho Hernandez, but I lost a lot of sleep over this one. And I think first of all, Lionel Messi is going to win it, and he's going to win it convincingly. So maybe I just was trying to even up the ballots a little bit. But I think it's a fair point. I mean, for him to ramp up to 20 goals by this, and I did my votes prior to decision day, but I think this year it was probably wise to wait until decision day because it was an MVP race that I felt was going to the tape. I mean, it was very fluid until October. This Evander was getting some hype, and I was going to say maybe a month, 3 weeks. I was going to say I'd probably vote for Evander. Granted, we're all in the West, so my votes were slightly tilted to the Western Conference, but I do that comfortably because I think the folks in the East do the same thing. So it all comes out in the wash. But it's the final that bounced around. Chicho Arango's award back in the summer, and then it was Evander's possibly, and then it was Messi, and then it was like Miami splitting the votes, and then Cucho and Lucho picked up the steam. So it really was like a dead heat almost. But Messi is the right choice. I mean, I almost regret the Cucho just because everything that you said, and not to mention how he's changed this league and the exposure we're getting. That's good for all of us in the big picture. Just, sometimes I like to peek at these social media numbers. And I know it's social media. It's not real life. But when you see, an Instagram post about Messi or Miami getting a million likes, or their YouTube video, which I watch so often of games, and you click on it, and normally an MLS YouTube game recap has like 20,000 likes, and then this last Miami game has 2.5 million after a day. This is raw numbers, and people are focusing on Messi in Miami, but that's a doorway for the rest of the league. And look, every league has these teams, and everyone kind of filters down. You know, Real Madrid and Barcelona, people don't watch La Liga to see Cadiz, or they don't watch the Premier League to see Nottingham Forest. They see the top, and the rest benefit from that. So hopefully we can get a couple more Messis if they're out there, and maybe some out here on the West Coast.
I mean, we do have Denny Bouanga, so that's basically like Messi too. If I had to,
it's true, and that's a good segue into the next question that we had for you. Actually, thanks for that, Noah. And for the record, Cucho Hernandez is a good vote. That's who I was gonna vote for, pretty much.
I was the devil on his shoulder
up
that said, "Don't do it."
Our episode where we went through the ballot, I was saying that I knew that Messi deserved it on the merits, but that I was going to give it to Cucho based on the minutes argument. By the end of the segment, I was like, you know what? Like, I know who I'm going to vote for, and I can feel convicted in it. Yeah, Noah, you mentioned LAFC there at the end, which, Max, obviously that's the club you know best. So we wanted to talk to you a little bit about LAFC, and just sort of sizing up the season as a whole from them. For us, LAFC and the Seattle Sounders played several times this year. It did not go.
Did they play?
It did not go what I would describe as especially well for the Seattle Sounders. Very one-sided head-to-heads in this Western Conference rivalry that's really developed since LAFC has been in the league. Obviously, another excellent season for LAFC in Supporters Shield contention. A kind of classic, I think, very good buzzsaw-like season in some ways, but from the outside, it feels like maybe a little more adversity at points than previous LAFC seasons. Would you agree with that? And just how are you feeling about this season and this team's MLS Cup prospects going into the playoffs?
I think a good launching point is, as we talked about MVP, my coach of the year was Tata Martino. But if I waited, I would have probably had to give Steve Cherundolo more consideration. And it's something the Sounders haven't had to do. But a lot of teams in MLS, Real Salt Lake, Houston, LAFC, Austin, several other teams, Cincinnati, they incorporated new players over the last few weeks, and they all kind of struggled. Colorado did that a little bit too with a couple new players. And that's something that is very difficult to do, to incorporate these players. And LAFC did it with, I think, about 5 players. Lewis O'Brien, who's an everyday starter now, Olivier Giroux, I know I'm forgetting a couple other guys, but the guys, Kai Kamara was earlier in the season, but there's a couple guys that you have to incorporate, and your team's going to sputter a little bit, maybe clip a hurdle. And they did, but then Steve Cherundolo got it all right, and now he has this team with these new players. Marlon, the Brazilian, just came in. He scores this huge goal on decision day. So he's gotten these guys in, and they've gelled as a team, which I just want to really let people know how difficult that is, because you've got to manage everything. There's players that are losing playing time. You've got to manage them. There's players that have to get adjusted. You got to get them into the bloodstream. And Steve Cherundolo did that in 2022. There was a little bit of a process where they struggled, and then things clicked. And this team is kind of getting towards that place where they could be the best LAFC team of the 3 years during this great era that they've had. And Steve Cherundolo is a big part of it. And they have a deep team. I mean, their bench is delivering. Depth is always such a luxury in MLS. LAFC has it. But this was a work in progress. He'd be the first to tell you that, too. It's like, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. They had that bad patch in August, and then it all fit. The jigsaw came together. So this is a very strong team, the worthy number 1 in the West, and they're going to be very difficult to beat. But talking to LAFC president Larry Friedman on Saturday night and a couple other people, everyone's worried about the Sounders because they're not a schlep team, and they're going to be hot. And the law of averages say it's hard to beat a team, 5 times? It's not a matchup that I think LAFC, maybe the Sounders don't want it either. But LAFC has to be going. We gave so much to beat this team in Leagues Cup, and that Open Cup game was a grind. It could have gone either way. It's hard to imagine that it could continue to be on one direction. I know it could, but it's interesting. It'll be interesting if that's the matchup we get in the conference semis.
I'm interested to know because I like this shout of Steve Cherundolo for Coach of the Year. We've been
we hadn't really.
We hadn't even put him on our radar, but I like.
It wasn't on my radar 2-3 weeks ago, and then I'm like, put him on there.
Yeah, I like this. We're very like we're pundit. We like to say we're not pundit brained. We're super pundit brained. We like to outsmart everyone, and I like the thought of like I didn't even think about how many players LAFC really did integrate, and that's been such a good quality. I feel like with LAFC. A lot of people want Albert Rusnak on the Sounders to be bought out or find some way to find a better DP. And we always hit on the fact that getting a new player, no matter what their salary range is, pedigree, is always going to be a challenge to get them integrated. And so I think that's a pretty good shout that I didn't think about. What about you, Ari?
No, I hadn't thought of that either, but I think Steve C did do a great job this year. Steve C, as we call him.
Yeah.
I like it. I think his Coach of the Year shout is actually a good one. But I think really like the point you were just making, Noah, like a lot of it is about John Thorrington from where I sit. The work that he's done with LAFC's roster, like really since they came into the league, has been fantastic. Wanted to ask you more broadly, Max, about the playoffs and just I was just going to tell you how I kind of see this playoff field this year, and then you can see if you see it similarly. But my question, I guess, is can anyone beat Inter Miami? Because the way I look at it is I really don't see much of a scenario where anyone is able to slow them down. I think Columbus and LAFC are probably the two clubs that are most equipped to do it. But I just think, I don't know about you, but when I watch this Inter Miami team play with Messi and the Barca boys, and when everyone's healthy and they're at the top of their game, I've never seen a MLS team that has a gear like this. Maybe 2019 LAFC got close, and maybe some of these recent Columbus and LAFC teams like they are buzzsaw like, but this Inter Miami team, they just have a different gear, and when they're in tournament mode and they're rolling, I have a hard time seeing how they don't win MLS Cup. Do you see that any different?
Unless you're New York City FC, because apparently, they can't beat New York City.
True.
Well, I guess that's the concern, is that maybe they have a bad day in the conference semis or the conference final, and that could see them out. But it's that what happened this weekend, and even the weeks prior, where they all season they fall behind in games, and then they just put their foot on the pedal. But to fall down 2 and have 6 unanswered, and that's Man City, that's Real Madrid behavior.
Yeah.
And I think if you put all these resumes next to each other, Inter Miami is far and away the best. Columbus is probably the second best, but then they go to Columbus a couple weeks ago and beat them pretty firmly. So there was a Columbus win there in the Leagues Cup and stuff. This Inter Miami team is healthy. They're well coached. There's a weird thing about, and we saw it from the beginning, just being on the field with Messi, which is something I never really considered about Lionel Messi in his prior spots. But just being on the field with him just lifts these guys to where, I think we've seen it with the national team. I don't know if the Argentine national team is this breathtaking, star-studded group that has now won 2 Copa Americas and a World Cup. And I don't think Messi is that influential, but there's something about his presence. He is influential, but there's something about his presence that now lifts these teams, that guys will do anything to let him be successful, and their games go through the roof. It's like this superpower thing. So it's not just Messi, and he wasn't like this in the past, lifting his game, but lifting others because of the type of guy he is, because of the type of teammate. He deserves all that credit, whether it's Suarez or Alba or Busquets, or whether it's Diego Gomez or Benjamin Kremaski or anybody, Drake Callender, that kind of are a better player playing with Messi than they might be somewhere else. So there's so many things at play here. And it's really important to also look at how they were so good when he wasn't playing. But I still think that that's some sort of Messi effect. This force field he builds around it. This is Lionel Messi's team, and because he's there, he has built a standard. And wearing that Inter Miami shirt, which has only been around for 3-4 years, carries a lot of weight now. Same way the Argentine national team or Barcelona does. It's something you can't really put your finger on, but it has made them, just this maybe the best team we've ever seen in MLS. But we've never really seen anything like this. And again, it's not just Messi, but his presence lifts this thing. And they've been very fortunate not to get too bad of bad health down the stretch, with the exception of Messi, who missed a big stretch a few weeks there after the Copa America. But it's really impressive. They should be the favorite, and I'm curious to see what the sports book thinks, because I imagine they're going to be the big money favorite to lift the MLS Cup.
Yeah, that's a great point about just the extent to which he elevates the whole team and all the players around him. I mean, I think he's the only player in the world that could turn Robert Taylor, our guy Bob T, into Angel Di Maria.
Yeah,
that was crazy. From the beginning, you'd see these players and go, "Who is this guy? I've seen this guy play for 2 years, and he's bang average, and now he's like, as you said, it's Angel Di Maria."
Yeah, no, it's phenomenal to watch. I did want to ask you if we could get back to LAFC for 1 second. I wanted to ask your thoughts on how the Olivier Giroud thing has gone so far. Obviously, he came in with, one of the best strikers of this generation, and came in with a lot of hype. And it feels like he has not maybe made the impact or played the amount that we might have hoped or thought he would yet. But when I look at it, I also think it is a very undeniable potential X factor for LAFC in the playoffs, in much the same way Gareth Bale proved to be a couple years ago. And I kind of, as I size up a potential matchup with Seattle and LAFC in the playoffs, I really can't get that out of my head. We saw a little bit of what he could do in the Open Cup, but where's his just fitness and integration with the team? And do you think that he could potentially take kind of a leap in the playoffs here?
I mean, we've been waiting, and I was anticipating that game against San Jose on decision day could be that breakthrough. The game prior against Vancouver, to me, was his best game of the season, even though he hasn't scored a goal and he's frustrated and he's not getting the service he needs. And sometimes it's just a square peg in a round hole with LAFC, because playing with Denis Bouanga has its challenges, right? I mean, Olivier Giroud is not full of pace. And Denis Bouanga stretches the field, and you could see Giroud trailing. So it's not a perfect teammate in that sense. Sometimes if they could slow it down a bit, maybe that brings Olivier Giroud. But his hold-up play, as you said, Ari, is like you can see that this is a step above, a class above type player. And everything's in there except the goals. What difference between him and Gareth Bale is obviously he's played every game almost down the stretch here. And he is just, you see him at training. He loves being here. This is not, I'm retiring. He loves it. You can see it at the end of decision day, embracing his teammates, watching the Houston Galaxy game, getting all giddy like a kid. So, and he's got Hugo Lloris there, who is, a familiar face and who has completely settled in and had a remarkable season, but I don't think we give him enough credit because it's Hugo Lloris. I think that possibility of exploding, he's going to keep playing. And I think Steve C does like what he brings to the plate, where he can have guys running off of him, and it creates an advantage. And he holds up center backs unlike any forward we have in this league, and that's something. You want the goals. LAFC are getting goals from different people, so you don't have to complain too much about the amount of goals, but you would like your number 9 to score. If the playoffs begin, and let's say 2 games in, he's not scoring, I wouldn't. There might be less minutes for him. I still think he starts. I also get the feeling if you get that first goal, maybe the second one comes in pretty quickly. It's him and his teammates still working on the best places to find him. You can see it's frustrating, but instead of putting his head down, he finds other ways to contribute to what LAFC does. So it's not an empty space by any means. It's not a guy going, hey, get him off the field. He does enough, even though he didn't play great against San Jose, he does enough to maintain his position in the starting 11.
I wanted to go back quickly to, you said the LAFC is not super excited to potentially play the Sounders here in the playoffs, which, we have to go play Houston. So there's no, you never know what's going to happen. But
by the way,
I want to hear this.
But I would just sorry to interrupt you, but
No,
I was watching the Houston game, and when Daniel Steres scored, everyone went crazy, except for Ben Olsen. And I get he would kind of put his head down because with all the positions changing, I think he said in his head, and I'm just saying this is what I think. I don't know if you thought this. He's thinking, I wanted Salt Lake. I don't want Seattle. I don't want. I mean, Seattle's. I mean, if you did a power rankings right now, and unless I put Inter Miami, Columbus, LAFC, Galaxy, Sounders, that's Cincinnati. That'd be the 5th best team in the league right now. You don't want them. If you get Salt Lake, who's sputtered, a team that integrated a lot of players and struggled. That's at the back end of the season.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And just, knowing all of that, and I guess with Houston being scared, what makes LAFC so fearful of another matchup, which I think Sounders fans, and I mean, Ari, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but that's like, I was praying we would get the 3rd seed so we could just go face the Galaxy and, hopefully beat them again.
Yeah.
I think you have that right. Yeah.
Maybe you're right and I'm wrong. And I'm just saying that maybe the players of LAFC are like, bring them on. We know how to beat them. That's just me thinking it. But, I think there are some people that go, I think anyone, you're like, can't keep.
Well, if there's one source of kind of optimism or hope that we've been holding on to, I mean, it's both the fact that Seattle's been in good form for the last couple months, but also Seattle does have a track record of kind of turning up come playoff time and going on these runs. They've been a very good tournament team, and they've won a few of these. If I was an opposing team, I wouldn't necessarily be chomping at the bit with Seattle to face Seattle either, even though it hasn't been maybe as good a season for Seattle as we've gotten used to like in the past few years. I think really I only have one more note.
Have you seen Pedro La Vega? Have you seen him can he be you've seen some good steps. Have you seen him someone we can depend on him? He could be a difference maker in the playoffs. Have we seen that De La Vega yet?
No. I don't think we will.
That's kind of the big question if that will finally happen. And I think any shot that this team has of making a sustained run in the playoffs hinges on that in a lot of ways. But he's been injured all year, hasn't looked fully fit, hasn't looked fully sharp, hasn't looked fully integrated when have that chemistry develop with the rest of the team. So
he looked all right against Portland. I'll say, like, he had some magic moments that I think Ari perfectly put this a couple episodes ago where he said he has these tools that no other player on the roster has. That if he can just get that finish down, get that final piece, get that pass off, he could be electric. But I think we've yet to see the end product.
Well, and at the very least, game 1, Houston, he's going to start. I mean, we're talking to Brian Smets. It could be Georgia Monongo. It has to be De La Vega at this point, correct?
We were actually planning on debating that when we record later, but yeah, I think so. But Georgie has made that more interesting discussion than you would probably think.
Sure,
he's been playing very well.
And either way, to have a guy like that, one of those guys come off the bench. I mean, because Seattle's depth is good. It's not LAFC's level, but any way they can close that gap, then that'll benefit the Sounders' hopes of advancing here.
Exactly. Well, unless you had anything else, Noah, I think we can get Max out of here.
I got one more.
Let's do one more.
Let's do one more.
We'll let you go, Max.
Hit your Rothrock question.
Oh, okay. I had
this Rothrock.
Well, I thought that we already did the Rothrock content, but yeah. So I mean, it's been the year of Paul Rothrock on our show. It started off as a bit,
little
sure.
Bit, yeah.
Well, like
half and half.
There was a period of time last year and earlier this season where Seattle was struggling a lot, mightily, some might say, on offense. And Paul Rothrock, every time he got a chance to play in the Open Cup, he was banging in goals. And we were like, you know what? Like, why not give him some run? You're not scoring goals anyway. Like, he scored goals in the Open Cup. May as well try it. And then Brian Schmetzer took our advice because he listens to the show.
He does.
And,
Big fan.
And then he started starting Paul Rothrock in all comps, and he hasn't stopped scoring goals since. My question I wrote down was just your thoughts on where Paul Rothrock ranks in the hierarchy of all-time great MLS players. But I mean, on a serious note, I mean, we took notice on the broadcast that you had clearly done your research and read up on the Paul Rothrock storyline, and we appreciated seeing someone with the national perspective actually look into what's happening with the team and be like, Paul Rothrock is apparently one of the best players. So I'm just wondering, like, from the outside perspective, how you kind of found out about the Paul Rothrock storyline and what you thought of it once you learned more about it. Because it's really, it's one of our favorite stories, I think, since we've covered the team.
Yeah, I think.
It really is stupendous. And, I try to talk to Brian Schmetzer because I don't have the trained mind that he has when he does these players. But when you see Paul Rothrock, you go, this is a star player. He's performing. At first, Brian Schmetzer put him in and said, I need a player that I can say, do this, and they do it to a T. So that just shows you, okay, it's a hardworking guy and, limited technical skills, which he disguises with the work, the intelligence, and this. I want to throw in bravery because he's just not intimidated. And something like that, I think, messes with these defenders because, Seattle's gotten pretty fortunate and they owe Paul Rothrock. They're indebted to Paul Rothrock because, look, they didn't add players. They haven't spent money other than De La Vega at the beginning of the season. No big moves there. And based on that, I would have imagined that Seattle would have been left behind and they maybe finished in the, where they were earlier in the season, 7, 8, 9. Paul Rothrock, to me, gave that little edge, which lifted everyone else. And it allowed all the pieces to work functionally. It allowed Jordan Morris to play where he does. I mean, if Jordan Morris could finish a little bit more frequently, he would have an MVP season as well. He's been great, but I mean, he still needs to tuck away a few more chances. And then Albert Rusnak with set pieces, winning set pieces. He wins free kicks. He gets corners, wins penalties. And, everyone in MLS is spending $10 million on a star winger, whether it's Joseph Paintsil or Gabriel Peck or Bukhari at Austin, guys like that. They're all dropping 9-10 million transfer fees. Seattle paid Zilch for a transfer fee, Paul Rothrock, and I'm not putting him in their class. He's not the player those guys are, but he's giving Seattle the same type of production that those guys are, and he may hit a wall, but I still sit here and go, he's getting better, and he's getting more and more confident. He feels he's at that level. I think it makes him a pretty dangerous player, and his arrival, where it was kind of cute at first, oh, that's nice, Paul Rothrock. He's just like a really important player, not just for the Sounders, but within this league. So I hope it keeps going. It really is remarkable. We don't get that. And it's another testament about how well the Sounders develop players locally. I know that there's probably more talent in LA. There should be more talent in Portland, but we don't see that. It's Seattle constantly finding, developing, and bringing them up to the senior team. And it's awesome when you have a team with such a local influence. Seattle is that.
Yeah, we love talking about that, and I'll leave it here with the Paul Rothrock. I thought it was fun. I did a little photo shoot with him last week, and he told me when we were just chatting, he was like, initially I was going to pitch myself as like a right back, like a right wing back. He was like, I just didn't care. I was like, I was going to do whatever it took to get on that field. And I just feel like that is the type of determination and stuff that I love to see in the league, one, because I think MLS gives such a great opportunity to players like that, and two, total Seattle story. And just to go along with your anecdotes there.
And it's so true that he totally bailed the Sounders out.
He did.
They haven't been playing. Rui Diaz has been hurt and non-productive when he has played all year. So that's one DP. De La Vega, another one, has been hurt pretty much all year, hasn't produced, and is just now getting fit. They got zeros from both of those spots on the roster and on the books. And Paul Rothrock comes in and saved their asses, I think it's fair to say. So that's a great point.
And Georgie Manungu, to a lesser degree, kind of on his heels, kind of saying, well, I'll give you a little bit more. Completely unexpected. Otherwise, Seattle would have had to go into the market and drop some serious coin, which I don't know if they wanted to do, to find someone that can give you the contributions that Paul Rothrock has given them. It's crazy. It's a really remarkable story. And when the cherry on top is that amazing hair he has.
He is. Yeah. His hair is great.
I'm just envious.
All right. Well, I think we are going to let you go on that. Max Bretos, voice of LAFC and Apple TV announcer. You can catch him on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. Max, thank you so much for the time. That was a great conversation. We'll have to do it again soon.
Let's do it.
Looking forward to the
what's your next match you're calling?
Yeah, what match are you calling next?
I'm going to do the Western Wild Card.
Nice.
So I'm flying to Portland tomorrow night, and I was actually going to do Seattle-Houston second game, but now we're going to do RSL and Minnesota game 1 and 2.
They robbed us. They robbed us.
Robbed of the Bretos call on the Sounders Dynamo game.
If it was a Sunday night game, I would have done it, but it was Sunday afternoon. It was tricky to get there.
Yeah. Well, hey, we appreciate you. Is there anything you want to plug? Anything like that?
Oh, sure. Check out the Soccer OG. It's my podcast. It's also on YouTube under my name, Max Bretos. Just trying to get some whatever hot American soccer stories out there, so I can get my 2 cents in.
I love it.
Catch it there.
We'll make sure to link it below so everyone who's listening and watching. Go check it out. We love Max. Thank you so much for doing this. We appreciate
you guys first class. Thank you.
Take care, Max.
Have a good one, Max.
Thanks again to Max Bretos, voice of LAFC. We really appreciate the time he gave us. That was some good stuff. I thought he I always like to talk to the national pundits, because they look at things through a different lens, and it was great to hear a national pundit be as jazzed on the Paul Rothrock storyline as we were. So thanks again to Max. Hopefully we can get him back on the pod soon. All right, I wanted to talk about this Houston Dynamo series real quick. I don't really think opponent previews are something we need to spend all that much time
We've got
on.
another week before we gotta.
Yeah, it's true, but I guess preliminary thoughts on the Dynamo, which is that I was looking at this matchup today, and the way I feel about it is it's two teams that I think are actually quite similar, and not just in how close together they are on the table, but in how their kind of rosters are set up, the things that they're good at, how they play. This Dynamo team, they played a few weeks ago, and we talked about them, but their strength is in midfield with Hector Herrera and Artur,
who will be back,
Coco Carrasquilla. Yeah, they have a very good, very technically skilled midfield, which has been a hallmark of these Sounders teams that we followed over the years. They're more of a slice and dice you type of team, but that can be very effective in transition, which I think is also very similar to Seattle. And they're a strong defensive team that has a good foundation, but maybe not the firepower of the elite teams going into the playoffs, which is also how I would describe Seattle.
Exactly.
So basically the way I see it is Seattle is playing a mirror image of themselves in a lot of ways. Except I think Seattle is a slightly better version and slightly ahead of where the Dynamo are in terms of just where they are, which is why they finished slightly ahead of them in the table. They won their head-to-head a couple weeks ago. But I guess my overall point is this Dynamo team, they're actually pretty good. No one think that this is a pushover series just because Seattle won the last game.
It's not 2018 Dynamo.
No, Hector Herrera is very legit. I'd only really watched him on El Tri before he came to MLS, and he's one of the best players in the league. It got talked about a lot last year, and this year he's missed a lot of time with injury, but he's going to be back for this game, and they did not have him in the last game, and he really he's so important to their whole offense, and also he's one of the best tempo setters, just that I've seen.
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough game. And this DP Ezequiel Ponce that they just brought in, it seems like he has been finding his form for them lately, scoring some goals for them. So dangerous team and a defensively solid team, which always presents challenges in the playoffs. But I think with Seattle being the higher seed, having the home field, they're the favorite, but not by like a crazy amount. I don't see it as a one-sided mismatch.
Yeah, I'm co-signed on this. I'm not stoked. I'm never stoked to play the Dynamo, no matter what year it is. I know that historically, in the most recent years, we've been, bamming, but it'll be a fun one to watch. And I really think, some people are going to call this a mid-off. I disagree.
It's like a pretty good off.
It's like a pretty good off. Yeah. I think that's yeah. Boom. Check it off the list.
Let's preview some of these other playoff matchups real quick and just talk about which games we think are going to be the best, because it all starts tomorrow, and we've got a pretty good one. Montreal, Atlanta.
No, that's a mid-off.
That's a bad off.
That's a bad off.
Although Montreal has low-key been pretty hot the last month.
Yeah, but, they did pull it together.
They really earned their playoff spot.
Joseph Martinez.
Atlanta United. Yeah, Joseph is hot.
And he's going to he could get his revenge on Atlanta.
He already did. Atlanta United are a funny case study to me, because I don't know how much you saw of this, but I follow them very closely for Schadenfreude.
Right.
Their fans did not want to. They actively did not want to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
They were like, when Atlanta was fighting for it on decision day, they were like, we want the season to be over. That's how bad the season was. And, a lot of people have the take that a team this bad shouldn't be in the playoffs. It's a joke. It's too easy to qualify. I think it's tight having the bad teams in the playoffs like this.
Like Sporting.
Yeah, it's good for the content. And then also, first of all, if you're a team that makes it in as the 8 or 9 wild card seed, you're not no one is using that as we had a great year and this was an acceptable standard that we played to. I guarantee you Atlanta United is not thinking of this playoff berth as that. So any notion that it squashes ambition or lets teams off the hook easily, I don't really agree with. And also when they do beat the better teams, it's funny. Yeah. If Atlanta goes on a run and takes down Inter Miami, that would be hilarious, and that wouldn't be possible if they didn't qualify. So I'm happy that they qualified, but I also think it's funny that their season was bad this year. It was really bad, and they still made the playoffs, and their fans don't want to watch it, and they have another game, which that's also funny.
That is hilarious, and it's even funnier if they win.
Yeah, exactly. And then on Wednesday, we've got Vancouver, Portland, which I wanted to talk about because the Whitecaps are down horrendously bad.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw this, but
we talked about them as one of the best teams in the league earlier in the season, which please do not go back and clip that.
This does not necessarily have to do with their quality on the field, but they were playing against Portland, Cascadia rivalry for the 8 or 9 seed, and that was going to be an exciting game because it was supposed to determine who hosted the wild card game. If Vancouver won, they hosted. Portland won, they hosted, as I understand it.
Yep.
And then before the game, it came out that the Whitecaps couldn't host regardless of what happens in the game because there's a motocross event at BC Place on the same day that they're supposed to host the game. And so the solution to that was to just have Portland host regardless of what happens with the seating, which is... they
tried to find another venue apparently, and they couldn't.
Right, there was none that passed the criteria for acceptable hosting.
Which would have been funny to have a playoff game at an Open Cup venue. That would have been so fun. A shitter game with those two teams in a shitty ass venue would have just fucking rocked.
Yeah, no, it would have. But either way, it sapped the excitement out of that game because Portland's hosting became guaranteed, and also it's just that's such a vibe killer. For that to happen before you get in the playoffs. But I think Seattle people, we can just kick back and watch the two Cascadia wildcard teams just duke it out for superiority of the mids, and not really care too much about who wins or loses. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yep.
And then we've got the Galaxy and the Rapids. I think the Galaxy are going to win that.
Mm-hmm.
Got Orlando City versus Charlotte, and I think that's going to be a good game. You got an Orlando team that's been really hot but took a really bad L on decision day versus a Charlotte team that no one talks about at all, including us, but have a really solid defense. The guy who's going to win goalkeeper of the year, and have really had a better season than I think a lot of people realize. And then from there, we got the other matchups set. There's Cincinnati and NYC.
I'm interested for that one.
Columbus has the Red Bulls. They're going to destroy the Red Bulls. RSL Minnesota. I think RSL is the favorite there, but I kind of like.
I kind of like Minnesota dark horse though.
I kind of like what they've been doing ever since they got Yeboah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
They've
good
been
matchups.
smashing recently. Wow.
Just excited for the playoffs, man. I love this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
It's go time.
This is
hopefully Seattle stays in it for a while, but I'm looking forward to it regardless of how the chips fall.
I will watch every game, unfortunately, because I am a sicko.
We are psychotic like that, and I will be doing the same thing.
Man, and my favorite among them will be whoever Inter Miami plays between Montreal and Atlanta. That is going to be that is appointment television for me, people. Because think about it. If you get Montreal or Atlanta to beat Inter Miami, that's just that's cinema. That's cinema.
Okay, we had one last topic here about Inter Miami and the Club World Cup. No, what is the latest down?
It was announced and awarded that Inter Miami received the host spot in the Club World Cup. And so they will be playing alongside the Seattle Sounders, and they will also be playing the opening match of the whole tournament.
And they got this for
winning the Shield. Yeah. And
but there's a lot of conspiracies out there that it was preordained that FIFA was going to try and get them in this tournament, which may or may not be true. I don't know. But what did Columbus Crew fans think of this?
Well, I mean, there were some Crew fans who were saying, actually, they didn't deserve it, and all of this stuff, and saying, well, it should be the winner of MLS Cup that gets
that we won.
Yeah, no, they were like, it should be the MLS Cup this season, even this season's MLS Cup winner.
Whoever won the cup the COVID year should go.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, COVID Cup. But I just thought it was so funny because why are Crew fans bad at this? One, I'm going to argue in favor of FIFA and Inter Miami and MLS. Why would you not want the best MLS team to ever touch grass, play, and be,
with the greatest player of all time on it?
Yeah.
So that's the point I was going to make about this whole, I've seen this discourse too. I really I don't care and have no problem that Inter Miami made it in. And for me, the way I think of it is, for an event like this, how you qualify is not of material concern to me.
The Sounders it's qualified for winning
but
something
you want what I would want in this situation is the clubs that I think are the best representatives for the league and the clubs that have the best chance to actually do well. So I think Seattle actually does meet one of those criteria in that they won a Champions League, which no other MLS team has done, and they've been among the standard-bearing clubs over this last era, going to a bunch of MLS Cups and winning CCL and earning their spot in the last Club World Cup. I don't think there's any argument to be made that if you're putting a couple MLS teams in this iteration of the tournament, Seattle has got to be one. Some people might not like that, but we'll go win CCL then.
Yep.
And then Inter Miami, like you said, they're the best team of all time with the greatest player of all time that just broke the points record. They meet the criteria of actually have a chance to go and mess around and maybe win a couple games. I'll be curious. I don't if it's Inter Miami versus some of the really big dogs that are at the Club World Cup, like Real Madrid won it the year Seattle was in it. They win it a lot.
They do.
I would be more curious to watch that game than if Seattle played Real Madrid.
Yeah.
If Seattle played a team like that, it doesn't matter how much time they spend over the offseason. They're not winning that game.
Yeah.
Inter Miami, I don't think they are, but I mean, they have 4 of the top 15 players that have ever played the game all on the same team, and a lot of really good, really high upside South American prospects that have world-class talent. So let's see what they can do at the Club World Cup. There is literally no better MLS team in MLS right now, but ever assembled that should be in a tournament like that. Yeah.
And even so, this is a exhibition of America, of American soccer before the World Cup. It's this. It's a great recruiting tactic for MLS clubs in general to say, listen, look, you could be playing in this with this expanded format. If you have fucking Columbus in there and they literally get sick and shit the bed. It's like, okay, you get 2 seconds of visibility, and that's bad for all clubs across the board. If Inter Miami goes on a run, who knows, who they're going to play, but like, that's good for everyone in the league. It's like tides rise all boats or whatever. But then I will say about Crew fans who are salty as hell. Go win it then.
Yeah, you're just
go win.
You're not quite on that level.
Go win.
You're not quite on that level. You got some trophies.
Yeah.
You got one of the MVP frontrunners.
Yeah.
Best coach in the league. Great team. You're not like quite Club World Cup quality. You don't even have a backup goalkeeper.
You don't. You squandered your opportunity to win the Shield, which you would have automatically qualified for. They would have said, no, it's MLS Cup now. But you also completely bungled your actual legitimate chance of qualifying by winning CCL, which was an automatic spot. And I'm sorry, I don't give a shit what you say. You fucked that one up.
No team that has played Sean Zawatsky in goal in the year 2024 can be at the Club World Cup.
I agree.
Sorry, that is that's just the rules.
That's law. That's written in the FIFA law.
I think that's a great place to end it. Good episode. Thank you, everyone, as always, for tuning in. We really appreciate all our subscribers and listeners and our YouTube subs.
And Max Bretos.
Max Bretos. Shout out Max Bretos for coming on the show. Appreciate him. Like, comment, subscribe, sounderatheart.com/LS.
Give us 5 stars.
5-star, write reviews, all that stuff.
Share with Sean Zawatsky.
We will see you guys pretty soon. We'll probably lay down another episode this week.
Mm-hmm.
For like playoff reaction and stuff. Okay, we'll be at you with another episode after we got some playoff results to talk about. Until then, we out.
Peace.